I watched my mother's hands tremble as she signed the withdrawal form, draining my college fund to pay for Melissa's spring semester at Yale. The bank manager looked uncomfortable, glancing between my pale, hollow-cheeked face and my sister's perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the marble counter. "This is taking forever," Melissa sighed, examining her reflection in her phone screen. "I'm going to be late for my flight back to campus." My father put a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle in a way it had never been with me. "Don't worry, princess. We'll get you to the airport on time." The manager slid the paperwork across the desk. "Mrs. Chen, I just want to confirm this account was established as an education fund for—" He checked his screen. "Emily Chen, you're aware that—" "I'm aware," my mother cut him off sharply. "Melissa is my daughter, too. She needs this money now. Emily can take out loans like everyone else." I said nothing. I didn't tell them that the collection agency had already called twice that morning about my hospital bills. I didn't mention that the oncology department had sent a final notice, or that without the next round of chemotherapy, my doctor had given me 6 months at most. I knew exactly how this would play out because I had lived it before. In my previous life, I had begged. I had cried. I had shown them the bills, the prognosis, the desperate letters from my medical team. My mother had looked me in the eye and said, "Melissa's education is an investment in our family's future. Your illness is unfortunate, but we can't let it ruin her opportunities." I had died 3 months later, alone in a hospice bed, while my parents attended Melissa's end-of-year gala at Yale. But then I woke up again, 2 years in the past, in my 23-year-old body, 3 days after receiving my cancer diagnosis. The universe, or fate, or whatever cosmic force governed these things, had given me a second chance. This time, I wasn't going to fight them. This time, I was going to let them make every terrible choice, every selfish decision, every cruel calculation. And I was going to make sure they paid for all of it. "Thank you for your help," I told the bank manager softly, giving him my best fragile smile. "I understand. Family comes first." My mother's expression flickered. Was that guilt? It vanished as quickly as it appeared. Melissa was already heading for the door, designer purse swinging from her shoulder. In the car, I pulled out my phone and made a call I hadn't made in my previous life. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, faintly accented. "Grandmother?" I said quietly, knowing my parents couldn't hear me in the front seat over Melissa's chatter about her sorority's spring formal. "It's Emily. Emily Chen, your son's daughter." There was a long pause. "Emily?" My grandmother's voice softened with surprise. "My dear child, I haven't heard from you in— It must be 5 years. I know, I'm sorry, but I need your help, and I need to explain something to you about your son." My parents had always been masters of favoritism. In my first life, I had believed it was somehow my fault, that I wasn't pretty enough, wasn't charming enough, wasn't worthy of their love. It took dying and being reborn to see the truth with crystal clarity. The favoritism had started when Melissa was born. I was 3 years old enough to remember the shift. Before her arrival, I had been the center of their world, or so I thought. But the moment my mother brought Melissa home from the hospital, something fundamental changed. My father, Robert Chen, was a mid-level executive at a pharmaceutical company. My mother, Linda, had given up her nursing career to be a stay-at-home mom. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Until Melissa. My sister was born beautiful, dark eyes, porcelain skin, the kind of baby that made strangers stop on the street to coo and compliment. And my parents became obsessed. Every penny, every moment, every ounce of attention poured into Melissa like water into a bottomless well. I learned to be invisible. I learned to make my own meals by age 7 because my mother was too busy coordinating Melissa's pageant schedule. I learned to walk to school alone because my father was driving Melissa to piano lessons, dance classes, tutoring sessions. I learned to celebrate my birthdays quietly with a grocery store cupcake I bought with my own saved allowance because Melissa's birthday parties were catered affairs with pony rides and professional photographers. "Why do you hate me?" I had asked my mother once when I was 12. She had forgotten to pick me up from school again, and I'd waited 3 hours in the rain. She'd looked at me with genuine surprise. "Hate you? Emily, don't be dramatic. I don't hate you. I just, Melissa needs more attention. She's special. Surely you can understand that? I couldn't, but I learned to accept it. High school was worse. Melissa joined the cheerleading squad, the debate team, the student government. My parents attended every game, every competition, every meeting. Meanwhile, I worked 2 part-time jobs to save for college because they'd told me bluntly that Melissa's college fund was more important, and I'd have to figure it out on my own. I got into a decent state school on a partial scholarship. Melissa got into Yale. The night she received her acceptance letter, my parents threw a party with 100 guests. The night I received mine, my father said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up from his phone, where he was texting about Melissa's acceptance to everyone in his contact list. But I pushed through. I worked full-time while taking classes full-time. I graduated with honors in biochemistry, landed a job at a biotech startup, and started building a life. For a brief, naive moment, I thought maybe I had escaped their toxicity. Then I got sick. The symptoms started subtly: fatigue, bruising, persistent infections. I ignored them, working through the exhaustion, until I collapsed at work one day and woke up in the emergency room. The diagnosis came fast and brutal: acute myeloid leukemia, aggressive, advanced. Treatment would be intensive, expensive, and my chances of survival without it were nearly zero. I had health insurance through my job, but it was basic coverage. The deductibles, copays, and uncovered treatments would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. My entire savings, $30,000 painstakingly accumulated over 5 years, would barely cover the first 2 months. I called my parents, still hoping, still stupidly believing that surely this would be the moment they'd choose me. This would be when their daughter's life would matter more than their favorite child's Ivy League prestige. My father had listened to my diagnosis in silence. Then he'd said, "Well, you have insurance, don't you? And there are payment plans. Hospitals work with you." Dad, the costs are enormous. Even with insurance, I'm looking at... Emily, I don't know what you want us to say. We have our own expenses. Melissa's tuition alone is $60,000 a year, and that doesn't include housing, meals, books. "I'm dying," I had whispered. "Don't be melodramatic. Cancer is treatable. Talk to the hospital about charity care." That's when my mother had gotten on the phone. "Emily, your father and I have worked very hard to give Melissa the opportunities she deserves. We took out a second mortgage for her first year at Yale. We can't just abandon that investment. You're 23. You're an adult. It's time to handle your own problems." I had stood in my tiny apartment, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That had broken long ago. This was deeper. This was the final severing of any delusion that I meant anything to them. In my previous life, I had kept trying. I had sold everything I owned. I had taken out loans with predatory interest rates. I had started a GoFundMe that raised barely $2,000 because my parents certainly weren't going to promote it to anyone they knew. I had worked until I physically couldn't anymore, showing up to my job with a catheter in my arm and vomiting between meetings. And still, it wasn't enough. The cancer was too aggressive, the treatments too expensive. 3 months after my diagnosis, I missed a critical round of chemotherapy because I couldn't pay the $15,000 fee. The cancer spread to my brain, and I spent my final weeks in hospice, fading in and out of consciousness. My parents visited once for 15 minutes and spent the entire time talking about Melissa's internship at Goldman Sachs. When I died alone at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, listening to someone else's family laughing in the room next door. My last thought had been, I hope it was worth it. And then I woke up. I woke up 2 years earlier, in my bed, my body healthy and whole, with the phantom memory of death still clinging to my consciousness like cobwebs. The date on my phone said March 3rd, 2023, 3 days after my original diagnosis in my previous life. I had gone to the same doctor, gotten the same tests. The diagnosis was identical. Acute myeloid leukemia. Aggressive, advanced. But this time, I had knowledge. I had time. And I had something more valuable than both. I had a plan. My grandmother, Mei Chen, was my father's mother. She lived in Hong Kong and had built a small fortune in real estate investment. My father had a complicated relationship with her. She was traditional, demanding, and had never approved of my mother. When I was 18, my parents had orchestrated a bitter falling out with her over some perceived slight at a family gathering. They had cut off all contact and forbidden me from reaching out to her. In my previous life, I had obeyed. I had been too busy dying to question their rules. This time, I called her 3 days after the bank, once I was certain my parents had fully committed to their choice. "Grandmother, I'm sick. I have cancer." I said it simply without drama. "I need treatment that costs more money than I have. My parents have chosen to give my college fund, the fund you helped establish, actually, to my sister instead. I'm calling because I wanted you to know, before I die, that I thought of you, that I wished things had been different." I wasn't lying. In my previous life's final days, I had thought of her often, wondering if she would have cared, if she would have helped. There was a sharp intake of breath. "Your college fund? The one I contributed $50,000 to when you were born?" "Yes, they withdrew it all yesterday. For Melissa's Yale tuition." "And your parents know you have cancer?" "Yes." "I see." Her voice went cold as winter steel. "Emily, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Send me all of your medical records, all of your bills, all of your financial information. Do you have a lawyer?" "No, grandmother." "You will by tomorrow. I'm going to send you contact information for a firm in your city. They work for me. You will meet with them and you will do exactly as they say." "Do you understand?" "Yes, but you are my granddaughter. You carry my blood. Whatever has happened between your father and me is irrelevant now. You will have the treatment you need. And then, Emily, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about your parents." I closed my eyes, letting relief and vindication wash over me in equal measure. "Thank you, grandmother." "Don't thank me yet. I have conditions. Anything. You will fight this cancer with everything you have. You will survive. And when you are well, you will come to Hong Kong and work with me. You will learn what it means to be a Chen, not whatever weak, selfish mockery your father has become." "I will." "Good. Expect a call within the hour." She hung up. I sat in my apartment, hands shaking with adrenaline, and smiled. The pieces were falling into place exactly as I had planned. But I had one more call to make. I dialed my parents' number. My mother answered. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to let you know I spoke with the hospital. They're willing to work with me on a payment plan. You and Dad don't need to worry about anything." "Oh." She sounded relieved. "That's good, honey. See? I told you it would work out." "Yeah, you were right. How's Melissa? Did she make it back to campus okay?" "She did. She just sent photos of her new dorm decorations. Let me send them to you. Actually, Mom, I should go. I'm feeling pretty tired, but I love you." There was a pause. She wasn't used to me saying that. "Love you too, Emily." I hung up and allowed myself a dark, satisfied laugh. I had just given them permission to forget about me entirely. And they would take it. They would spend the next 6 months living their perfect life with their perfect daughter, completely oblivious to the storm I was building. By the time they realized what was happening, it would be too late. The lawyer my grandmother sent was named David Wong, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s who specialized in medical law and family trusts. He arrived at my apartment with a briefcase and a tablet and spent 3 hours documenting everything. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases of financial exploitation I've seen," he said, tapping through notes. "Your grandmother established that education fund specifically for you. Your parents were trustees, but the fund was meant to be inviolable except for your educational expenses. Their withdrawal for your sister's benefit is technically legal. They were listed as having full discretion, but morally and ethically questionable, especially given your medical circumstances. Can we get the money back?" "Not directly, but your grandmother has instructed me to pursue several other avenues. First, she's covering all of your medical expenses directly. Second, she's establishing a new trust in your name that your parents cannot access under any circumstances. Third," he smiled slightly, "she's asked me to conduct a full audit of your parents' financial relationship with her over the years. Apparently, there were several gifts, loans, and investments she made in your father's name that she's now reconsidering." I leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means your grandmother helped your parents buy their house. She co-signed loans. She invested money in your father's name during the '08 crash that has since appreciated significantly. All of this was done with the understanding of a harmonious family relationship. If that relationship is severed due to their treatment of you, her granddaughter, well, there are contractual clauses we can invoke. You're saying you can take their house? I'm saying your grandmother technically owns 35% of it, and if she chooses to exercise her right to force a sale due to breach of implied familial contract terms, yes, we can take their house. I sat back, my mind racing. Don't, not yet. David raised an eyebrow. No. I want them to feel safe first. I want them to think that they got away with it. Let them enjoy their choice. Let Melissa finish her semester. Let them brag to their friends about their daughter at Yale. And then, when they're at their most comfortable, when they've completely forgotten about me, that's when we move. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your grandmother said you were smart. She didn't mention you were strategic. I had a good teacher, I said, though I meant death, not my grandmother. Dying teaches you a lot about what really matters. Over the next 3 months, I threw myself into treatment. My grandmother's money meant I had access to the best oncologists, the most advanced therapies, the cutting-edge clinical trials. I responded well, better than I had in my previous life, probably because I started treatment immediately instead of delaying for weeks while desperately trying to scrape together funds. My parents called once in those 3 months. My mother checking in with the kind of obligatory concern that felt like a checkbox on a to-do list. How are you feeling, honey? Much better. The treatment is going well. That's wonderful. See, I told you it would work out. You just needed to trust the process. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. How's Melissa? Oh, she's amazing. She just got selected for a summer program at the London School of Economics. Isn't that incredible? We're so proud. Though I have to admit the program fee is steep, another $10,000. But we'll figure it out. Your father might ask for a raise. Not, I'm proud of you for fighting cancer. Not, you're so brave. Just Melissa, Melissa, Melissa. That's great, Mom. I'm really happy for her. I'll send you photos from her acceptance dinner. We went to that nice steakhouse downtown. Oh, Emily, I wish you could have been there, but I know you're busy with everything. Busy dying, busy fighting for my life, busy being the daughter you'd rather forget. Next time, I said sweetly. Definitely. Okay, honey, I have to run. Your father and I are meeting with Melissa's academic advisor on Zoom. Feel better. She hung up before I could respond. I forwarded the call log to David Wong with a simple message. Documentation. He replied, received, building the file. By June, my scans were clear. The cancer was in complete remission. My doctor called it remarkable and almost unprecedented for such an aggressive case. I knew it was partly luck, partly the fact that I'd started treatment immediately this time, and partly that having resources, real resources, meant I wasn't fighting cancer and poverty simultaneously. My grandmother flew to see me, arriving in a whirlwind of silk and efficiency. She was 72, imperious, and beautiful in the way of women who have never apologized for taking up space. Stand up, she commanded when she entered my apartment. Let me look at you. I stood. She circled me, eyes sharp, then pulled me into a surprisingly fierce hug. You survived. Good. Now we work. She released me and settled into my only decent chair like it was a throne. Tell me everything about your parents. I want to know exactly who my son has become, I told her. Not just the facts, but the feelings. The years of being invisible. The birthday parties that never happened. The way my father's eyes would skim past me to Melissa like I was wallpaper. The time I won a science competition and my mother forgot to come to the ceremony because she was shopping for Melissa's prom dress. The moment I called from the hospital, terrified and alone, and my father told me to stop being melodramatic. My grandmother listened without interruption, her face growing colder with each story. When I finished, she said, Your parents have become exactly what I feared. Small people obsessed with appearances and status. They see children as investments, not human beings. She paused. Your sister, Melissa, tell me about her. I hesitated. In my previous life, I wanted to hate her, but she's a product of how they raised her. She's 21 now, beautiful, accomplished, utterly convinced that the world revolves around her because it always has. She's not evil, she's just oblivious, entitled. She genuinely doesn't understand that other people's needs matter. Does she know about your cancer? She knows. She sent me a thinking of you text with a flower emoji once, 4 months ago. My grandmother's expression could have frozen fire. I see. And your plan? I want them to lose everything, not just money. I want them to lose their status, their reputation, their perfect daughter's respect. I want them to understand, truly understand, what they gave up, what they destroyed. And then?
Yeah.
And then I want to build something beautiful from the ashes. I want to become someone they'll desperately wish they'd invested in. Someone so successful, so wealthy, so powerful, that every time they see my name, they'll choke on their regret. My grandmother smiled. It was not a kind smile, it was the smile of a predator recognizing a kindred spirit. Then let's begin. Phase 1 was information gathering. David Wong hired a private investigator who documented everything. My parents' spending patterns, their social media posts, their financial records. What we found was illuminating. In the 2 years since Melissa started at Yale, my parents had spent $270,000 on her education and lifestyle. This included $120,000 in tuition, $40,000 in housing and meal plans, $25,000 in educational travel, spring break in Cancun, summer programs in Europe, $35,000 in clothes, accessories, and networking expenses, $50,000 in various fees, sorority dues, and miscellaneous costs. They had funded this through my $30,000 college fund, the one my grandmother had largely funded, a second mortgage on their house, $80,000, credit card debt, $45,000, loans against my father's 401k, $60,000, cash gifts from family members, guilt-tripped, $25,000, and selling my late mother's jewelry, $30,000. They were, in short, financially overextended to the point of catastrophe. They had sacrificed their retirement, their equity, and their financial security to fund Melissa's Ivy League fantasy. Meanwhile, Melissa's actual academic performance was mediocre. The private investigator obtained her transcripts through connections. She was maintaining a 2.9 GPA. She'd switched majors 3 times. She was on academic probation with her sorority for missing too many mandatory study hours. The $270,000 investment was yielding a product of dubious value. But my parents' social media told a different story. Facebook, Instagram, Christmas cards all featured Melissa in Yale gear, Melissa at fancy dinners, Melissa with her sorority sisters. My father's LinkedIn mentioned proud father of a Yale student in his bio. My mother had joined Facebook groups for Ivy League parents and posted constantly about Melissa's achievements. They had bought status. They had purchased the ability to say, "My daughter goes to Yale." And it was worth more to them than my life had been. Phase 2 began in August, right before Melissa's senior year. David Wong sent a formal letter to my parents. It was professionally printed on law firm letterhead delivered by certified mail and utterly devastating in its politeness. The letter informed them that Mei Chen was exercising her contractual rights regarding the property at 847 Maple Street, their house. As a co-signer and investor with a 35% stake in the property, she was invoking a clause that allowed her to force a sale if the primary mortgage holders defaulted on any obligations to her. My father had borrowed $40,000 from my grandmother 12 years ago to help with the down payment. The terms had been informal. Pay it back when able, no interest, family helping family. He'd never paid back a cent. Now my grandmother was calling in the debt, with interest. The total owed, $65,000. Payment due in 90 days, or the house would be sold to recover the funds. My father called me for the first time in 6 months. "Emily, thank God. I've been trying to reach you." Liar. My phone had no missed calls from him. "Hi, Dad. What's going on?" "It's your grandmother. She's gone insane. She sent us this crazy letter about the house, demanding money we don't have. You need to talk to her. Make her understand we're family. Dad, I can't interfere with grandmother's business decisions. Business decisions? Emily, this is our home. We have 90 days to come up with $65,000 or we lose the house. You have to help us. You're her granddaughter. She'll listen to you. I let the silence stretch, then very softly. Did you know I almost died? What? The cancer. It almost killed me. The doctor said if I'd waited another month to start treatment, I'd be dead. I couldn't afford treatment, Dad. Remember? I called you. I begged you. You told me to work it out with the hospital. Emily, we already discussed this. Grandmother paid for my treatment. Every penny. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. She saved my life when my own parents wouldn't. That's not fair. We didn't have the money. You had my college fund, the fund she contributed to. You took it and gave it to Melissa. Melissa's education is important. And my life wasn't? He had no answer to that. I could hear him breathing, could imagine him turning red, struggling to find justification. Finally, he said, "What do you want, Emily?" I don't want anything, Dad. This is between you and grandmother. But I will tell you this. She knows everything. She knows exactly how much you've spent on Melissa. She knows you haven't called me since June. She knows you chose your pride over your daughter's life. And she's done pretending to be okay with it. You told her? You went behind our backs to turn her against us? I laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. I told her the truth. What you did with that truth was your choice. Just like what you did with my college fund was your choice. Choices have consequences, Dad. You taught me that. Emily, please, I have to go. I'm actually meeting grandmother for dinner tonight. We're planning my move to Hong Kong. Good luck with the house. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not with fear, with savage, righteous satisfaction. This was just the beginning. My mother called 2 days later. She tried the soft approach. Honey, I know you're upset with us, and I understand, I really do. But this thing with your grandmother, it's going too far. We're going to lose our home. Where will we live? I don't know, Mom. Where would I have lived if I'd been evicted while dying of cancer? That's different. How? Emily, you're being cruel. We're your parents. We made mistakes, yes, but we were doing what we thought was best. Best for who? Not me. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Do you know how expensive Melissa's education is? Do you know how expensive dying is? She made a frustrated noise. Why are you being like this? We need you to help us. Talk to your grandmother. Make her see reason. You're the only one she'll listen to. I already told Dad I'm not interfering with grandmother's business decisions. She's doing this because of you, because you poisoned her against us. No, Mom. She's doing this because you stole from me and let me nearly die. I just made sure she knew about it. We didn't steal. You took money that was designated for me and gave it to Melissa while I was dying. That's theft, Mom. And it's worse than theft. It's betrayal. I could hear her crying now. In my previous life, this would have broken me. I would have caved, apologized, tried to fix things. But I had died once already. I had nothing left to lose and no more patience for their guilt trips. Emily, please, I'm begging you. We'll lose everything. You already lost the only thing that mattered, I said quietly. You just didn't notice. I ended the call and blocked their numbers. The 90-day deadline came and went. My parents couldn't pay. They tried to refinance, but they were too deep in debt. They tried to take out new loans, but their credit was destroyed. They tried to negotiate with my grandmother, but she was immovable. The house went up for sale. Melissa came home for fall break to find her parents packing. She called me, her voice shrill with panic. Emily, what the hell is going on? Mom and Dad are losing the house, and they're saying it's because of grandmother, because of you. It's complicated, Mel. Uncomplicated. They're talking about moving into a 2-bedroom apartment. They're selling all the furniture. Mom is crying all the time. Dad looks like he's aged 10 years. What did you do? I survived, I said simply. That's what I did. This is about the college fund thing, isn't it? Emily, that was months ago. Are you seriously still mad about that? The college fund thing, I repeated slowly. Is that what they told you it was? They said you were upset because they used your college fund for my tuition, but you already graduated, so it's not like you needed it? Melissa, I had cancer. Silence. What? I had cancer, acute myeloid leukemia. I was diagnosed in March. I needed immediate treatment that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I called mom and dad, begging for help. They chose to drain my college fund, the money that was supposed to be mine, to pay for your Yale tuition instead. I almost died because I couldn't afford treatment. More silence. Then, you're lying. I'm not. Mom and dad wouldn't do that. Ask them. You're lying because you're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. Melissa, I don't care enough about you to be jealous, but you should ask yourself something. If I'm lying, why are mom and dad about to lose their house? If I'm lying, why is grandmother so angry? If I'm lying, why haven't I spoken to our parents in months? Because you're a vindictive bitch, she shrieked. No, I said calmly. I'm a daughter who learned that her life was worth less than her sister's college fund. Everything else is just consequence. I hung up. That night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Melissa. I asked them. You weren't lying. I don't know what to say. I didn't respond. The house sold in December. My parents moved into a cramped apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. They had to sell most of their furniture to pay off their most pressing debts. My father's retirement fund was decimated. My mother had to get a job for the first time in 20 years, working retail at a department store. Their social media went quiet. No more posts about their Yale daughter. No more photos of expensive dinners. Just a silence. But I wasn't done. Phase 3 began in January of Melissa's senior year. David Wong sent a package to the Yale administration's financial aid office. It contained documentation of my parents' financial situation, specifically their misrepresentation of their assets on Melissa's financial aid applications. They had failed to report several accounts, the value of the house before they lost it, and various sources of income. Evidence that Melissa had listed me as a dependent on her own financial aid forms, claiming she was helping support me, which was categorically false and constituted fraud. A formal complaint about financial aid fraud. Yale took financial aid fraud very seriously. They launched an investigation. 2 weeks later, Melissa called me, hysterical. They're taking away my financial aid, all of it. They're saying we committed fraud, that we lied on the forms. Emily, I'm going to have to leave Yale. I can't afford the tuition without the aid. My last semester, I'm not going to graduate. That's unfortunate, I said mildly. You did this. You sent them that information. I reported fraud, which is what you and mom and dad committed. We just didn't report a few things. Everyone does it. Not everyone, and now you're facing the consequences. I'm going to lose everything. Do you understand? I won't graduate from Yale. 4 years of work, gone. Yes, I said. I understand exactly what it feels like to lose everything because of other people's choices. Please, Emily, please, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about the cancer. I'm sorry we weren't there for you. I'm sorry. Please make this stop. I can't. Yale is conducting their own investigation. This is out of my hands. Bullshit. Your grandmother's lawyer started this. You can make them back off. Why would I? Because I'm your sister. You know what's funny, Mel? I used to think that mattered. I used to think that being sisters meant something, that family meant something. But you taught me otherwise. You and mom and dad, you taught me that love is conditional, that family is transactional, that some people's dreams matter more than other people's lives. Emily, you're 21 years old. You've had every advantage, every opportunity, every resource. You've had parents who mortgaged their future for you. You had my college fund. You had 4 years at Yale. And what did you do with it? A 2.9 GPA, 3 major changes, academic probation with your sorority. I know everything, Melissa. I know exactly what my life was traded for, and it wasn't worth it. I hung up. Melissa withdrew from Yale 2 weeks before graduation. The university gave her the option to finish her degree elsewhere, but the credits didn't transfer well. She ended up moving back in with our parents in their tiny apartment, working at the same department store as our mother, trying to finish her degree online through a state school. The Yale student vanished from my father's LinkedIn. The Ivy League Parents Group post stopped. The carefully curated image of success crumbled. And I went to Hong Kong. My grandmother's company, Chen Holdings, was a real estate and investment empire, worth approximately $200 million. She had built it from nothing, starting with a single apartment building in the 1980s and expanding through shrewd investments and an almost supernatural instinct for market timing. You will start at the bottom, she told me on my first day. You will learn every aspect of this business, and when you are ready, when you have proven yourself, I will make you my heir. I learned. I worked 80-hour weeks, absorbing everything: property valuation, market analysis, negotiation tactics, financial modeling. My background in biochemistry gave me an unexpected edge in analytical thinking. My experience with cancer gave me a fearlessness about risk that most people never develop. Within a year, I was leading acquisitions. Within 2 years, I was running an entire division. My grandmother watched my progress with fierce pride. "You are everything your father should have been," she told me. "Everything I hoped for." In my third year in Hong Kong, I started my own venture within Chen Holdings, a biotech investment fund focused on cancer research. I used my scientific background to evaluate promising startups, my business training to structure deals, and my personal experience to understand what patients actually needed. The fund exploded. One of our first investments, a company developing a new immunotherapy approach, had a breakthrough that sent its value soaring. Suddenly, I wasn't just wealthy by inheritance. I was wealthy through my own success. Forbes published a profile: Emily Chen, 28, the biotech investor who's beating cancer twice. The article mentioned in passing that I was the granddaughter of Mei Chen and had survived acute myeloid leukemia at 23. It did not mention my parents, it did not mention Melissa. They were irrelevant to my story, but they saw it anyway. My father sent me an email. I found it in my spam folder 3 weeks after it was sent. "Dear Emily," it began, "I saw the Forbes article. Your mother and I are so proud of you. We always knew you were special, that you would accomplish great things. We miss you terribly and hope you'll come visit soon. We'd love to reconnect and hear about your life in Hong Kong. We're still your parents, and we love you very much. Please call when you can. Love, Dad." I deleted it without responding. My mother tried LinkedIn, sending a connection request with a message. "So proud of my successful daughter. Let's catch up." I declined. Melissa sent an Instagram DM. "Hey, sis. I know things got complicated, but I saw your Forbes thing and wow, you're doing amazing. Maybe we could talk? Start over? I've been thinking about everything, and I realize I was pretty self-centered. I'm different now. Let's get coffee if you're ever in the States." I left her on read. They tried other channels. My grandmother's assistant fielded calls from my father requesting business advice. David Wong received emails from my mother asking about investment opportunities. Melissa sent me a LinkedIn request claiming she was exploring opportunities in biotech. They all went ignored, because this was the best revenge of all. Not anger, not confrontation, but complete and utter indifference. They had made me irrelevant in their lives, and now I was returning the favor. Except their irrelevance came with the bitter knowledge of what they'd lost. 5 years after I moved to Hong Kong, I returned to the United States for a conference. I was keynoting a major biotech summit in Boston, discussing the intersection of patient advocacy and investment strategy. My speech went viral, not just in biotech circles. It hit mainstream media because I told my story. I told them about being diagnosed with cancer, about being unable to afford treatment, about having to choose between chemotherapy and rent, about the systematic failures in American healthcare that meant people died not because medicine couldn't save them, but because they couldn't afford to be saved. I didn't mention my parents specifically. I didn't need to. The story was powerful enough on its own, but the video reached millions, including, inevitably, everyone in my hometown. I started getting messages from old family friends, people who had attended Melissa's Yale celebration parties, people who had watched my parents brag for years about their Ivy League daughter. "I had no idea you went through this. Your parents never mentioned you were sick. We would have helped if we'd known." The whispers started. I heard about them secondhand through a friend who still lived in the area. People were asking questions. Why had the Chens never mentioned Emily's cancer? Why had they been spending money on Melissa's lifestyle while Emily was dying? Why had Emily moved across the world and cut them off? The perfect image my parents had curated for decades began to crack. Then someone found my medical GoFundMe from my previous life's timeline. In this timeline, I'd never created one, but the universe's quantum echoes apparently meant some version of it still existed in cached internet archives. A local blogger wrote about it. Local woman nearly died while family funded sister's Ivy League dream. It went regional, then national. My parents became pariahs. Their neighbors stopped talking to them. My father's company quietly let him go. My mother was fired from her retail job after customers started recognizing her and leaving negative reviews. Melissa's career prospects evaporated. She had eventually finished her degree online, but every job interview ended the same way. Someone would Google her, find the connection to me, read the story, and suddenly the position was filled. They were living the nightmare of being publicly known for their worst choice. I did nothing to stop it. I also did nothing to encourage it. I simply existed, successfully and visibly, while the truth spoke for itself. My grandmother died peacefully in her sleep at 79. I was with her, holding her hand in her Hong Kong penthouse, overlooking Victoria Harbor. Her last words to me were, "You became everything I hoped, everything they could never appreciate. Promise me you'll never forgive them. Some things are unforgivable." "I promise," I whispered. She smiled and closed her eyes. She left me everything. Chen Holdings, her properties, her investments, her cash, all of it. The will was ironclad. My father, her only child, received nothing. The will's language was brutal. "To my son Robert, I leave the memory of the daughter he abandoned and the fortune he will never touch. May he live with his choices." My father tried to contest it. David Wong crushed the challenge in 3 weeks, and I inherited $340 million. At the reading of the will, I saw my father for the first time in 6 years. He had aged terribly. His hair was fully gray, his face lined with stress and bitterness. He looked at me across the conference room with such desperate hope that I almost felt pity. Almost. "Emily," he said after the lawyers left, "can we talk?" "No. Please, 5 minutes. I'm your father." "You stopped being my father when you chose $60,000 over my life." "I made a mistake. I know that now. I was wrong. But I'm still your father. We're still family. Family doesn't leave each other to die." "I didn't know you were dying." "I told you. The doctor told you. The diagnosis was clear. You knew and you didn't care." He had no response to that. His eyes filled with tears. Real tears, probably the first genuine emotion he'd shown about me in years. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are," I said. "You're sorry you lost the house. Sorry you lost your mother's fortune. Sorry that everyone knows what you did. You're sorry about consequences, not choices." "That's not true, and isn't it? If I had died, would you be sorry? Or would you just be relieved you didn't waste Melissa's college money?" He flinched like I'd struck him. I gathered my documents and stood. "I hope it was worth it, Dad. I hope that every time you see Melissa working retail with her online degree, you remember that you traded me for that. I hope you think about it every day for the rest of your life." I walked out. He called after me, but I didn't turn back. 10 years after my rebirth, I stood in the Shanghai International Convention Center, accepting the Healthcare Innovation Award for my fund's work in making cancer treatment accessible. The award came with $10 million in funding for the recipient's chosen charity. I donated it all to a foundation I'd created that paid cancer treatment costs for young people whose families couldn't or wouldn't help them. I named it the Second Chance Foundation. During my acceptance speech, I told my story one more time. I'd told it so often by now that it had become almost clinical, a case study rather than a wound. But tonight, I let myself feel it. I'm alive because my grandmother saw my worth when my parents couldn't, I said to the audience of thousands. I'm alive because someone chose to invest in my life rather than my sister's prestige. I'm alive because I got a second chance, a chance many people don't get. This foundation exists to be that second chance for others. The applause was thunderous. Later at the reception, a young woman approached me. She was 24, thin from recent treatment, but her eyes were bright with hope. "Miss Chen," she said, "I'm alive because of your foundation. My parents kicked me out when I came out as gay. I was diagnosed with leukemia 6 months later and had no one. Your foundation paid for everything. I just finished my last round of chemo. I'm in remission. I hugged her, this stranger who was also somehow me, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain, something else. Something like purpose. I'm so glad you're still here, I whispered. Me too, she said. Thank you for your second chance. After she left, I stood alone on the terrace, looking out over Shanghai's glittering skyline. My phone buzzed, a message from David Wong. Your father tried to contact the foundation asking for money. His medical bills, he has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Prognosis is poor. Wants to know if you'll help with treatment costs. I looked at that message for a long time. In my previous life, I had begged. I had degraded myself. I had offered everything I had, everything I was, in exchange for their help. And they had calculated my worth and found it wanting compared to Melissa's Yale tuition. Now my father was doing the same, coming to me, hat in hand, asking me to calculate his worth. I typed, tell him the foundation has eligibility requirements. One of them is that applicants must demonstrate a history of supporting family members in medical crisis. I suspect he won't qualify. Then I added, also tell him that the foundation only helps people without other resources. He has a daughter at home. Perhaps she'd like to contribute to his care. I sent the message and put my phone away. I did not hear from him again. 3 months later, David Wong called. Your father passed away yesterday. Pancreatic cancer. Melissa is asking if you'll help with funeral costs? No. She said to tell you she's sorry, that they're all sorry. I'm sure they are. She also said she's pregnant, your parents' first grandchild. She wanted you to know you're going to be an aunt. I felt nothing, not anger, not joy, not curiosity, just nothing. Thank her for letting me know. Emily, David, do you know what the most liberating thing in the world is? What? Complete indifference. For years, I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to hurt the way they hurt me. But now, I feel nothing. They're not my family. They're just people who share my DNA. People who made choices and lived with consequences. I'm done carrying them in my heart, even as anger. That's very zen of you. I laughed. You're not zen, just free. I didn't attend my father's funeral. I heard from old family friends that it was small, sad, poorly attended. Melissa gave the eulogy and apparently broke down crying, talking about regrets and lost chances. My mother sent me one final email afterward. Your father's dying words were your name. He said he was sorry. He said he loved you. He said he hoped you'd forgive him someday. I hope you can live with not being there for him the way he couldn't be there for you. I read it once, then deleted it. She was trying to make me feel guilty, trying to create some equivalency between my absence at his deathbed and his abandonment of me while I was dying of cancer. But there was no equivalency. He had chosen his absence while I was sick, suffering, and begging for help. I had chosen mine after building a life he had no part in, after he had proven repeatedly that my existence mattered only when it could benefit him. I had not abandoned him. I had simply stopped existing for him the way he had wished I would stop existing for him years ago. 15 years after my rebirth, I married. His name was James, a fellow biotech investor I'd met at a conference in Singapore. He was kind, brilliant, and had survived his own trauma. A different kind, but trauma nonetheless. He understood survival. He understood that some families were born and some were chosen. We had a small wedding in Hong Kong. My grandmother's old friends attended. My chosen family, colleagues, mentors, people who had seen my worth without conditions. We released lanterns over the harbor at sunset, each light representing a second chance, a new beginning. No one from my birth family was invited. I heard through the grapevine that Melissa cried when she found out I'd gotten married without telling her. My mother apparently tried to crash the wedding and was turned away at the venue. I felt nothing. James and I built a beautiful life. We had twin daughters when I was 37. I named them after my grandmother, May and Lynn. I held them in my arms and promised them something my parents never promised me. You will always be enough. You will always be loved. You will never have to earn your place in my heart. When they were 5, Melissa tracked down our address and sent a package. Inside was a letter and a photo of her son, my nephew, I supposed, though I'd never met him. The letter was long, rambling, full of regrets and excuses and pleas for reconciliation. He deserves to know his aunt, she wrote. Your daughters deserve to know their cousin. We're still family. We can still fix this. James found me staring at the letter, unreadable emotions on my face. What do you want to do? He asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks, maybe enough time has passed, maybe for the kids' sake. Emily, he took my hands. You don't owe them anything. Not your time, not your energy, not your daughters. They had 17 years to be family to you. They chose not to. You get to choose too. I looked at the photo of Melissa's son. He looked like her, dark eyes, bright smile. Innocent. But inviting them into my life meant inviting the pain back in. It meant explaining to my daughters why they'd never met their grandparents, why their aunt was a stranger, why our family tree had such deep cuts. I thought about my own childhood, about being the forgotten daughter, about watching my parents pour love and resources into my sister while I scrounged for scraps of attention. I would not do that to my daughters. I would not introduce them to people who might compare, might favor, might replicate the patterns that nearly destroyed me. No, I said finally. The answer is no. I burned the letter and donated the photo to a database for genealogy purposes. If my nephew ever wanted to find me as an adult, that was his choice. But I would not open the door to the people who had tried to close it on my life. 20 years after my rebirth, I received a phone call from a hospice facility. My mother was dying. Pancreatic cancer, like my father. The nurse explained that she had no one. Melissa had moved across the country, estranged after some falling out over money. My mother's final request was to see me. Will you come? The nurse asked gently. I sat in my Hong Kong office, looking out over the harbor, and thought about the girl I'd been. The girl who had begged for scraps of love. The girl who had died alone in a hospice bed while her parents celebrated her sister's achievements. I thought about the woman I'd become. The survivor, the success story. The person who had built everything my parents had denied me. And I thought about forgiveness. My grandmother had made me promise never to forgive them. But my grandmother was gone and I was free to make my own choices. Did I want to forgive? No. Forgiveness wasn't required for me to be at peace. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I owed them. I had built my peace on their absence, and I would not disturb it for a deathbed confession. No, I told the nurse, I won't be coming. She's very sick. She might not have long. I understand. She seems to have a lot of regrets, a lot she wants to say to you. I'm sure she does, but I don't need to hear it. Thank her for calling, but my answer is no. The nurse was quiet for a moment, then, I understand. I'm sorry it's come to this. I'm not, I said truthfully. Not anymore. My mother died 2 days later. Melissa sent me an angry voicemail. She died calling for you, begging for you, and you couldn't be bothered to grant a dying woman her last wish. What kind of monster have you become? I deleted it without listening to it all the way through. I was not a monster. I was simply no longer their victim. Now, at 43, I stand in my office at Chen Holdings, looking at my empire. My biotech fund has helped bring 15 cancer treatments to market. My Second Chance Foundation has paid for over 10,000 patients' treatment costs. I've been named one of the most influential people in global healthcare. My daughters are thriving. May wants to be a doctor. Lynn wants to be an entrepreneur. Both of them are confident, loved, certain of their place in the world. They will never know what it's like to be invisible in their own family. Last month, Melissa's son, now 23, reached out to me on LinkedIn. His message was thoughtful, intelligent. Miss Chen, I'm Marcus. I'm your nephew, though we've never met. I want you to know that I've spent my life hearing two versions of the same story. My mother's version, where you're the villain who destroyed our family out of spite. And the internet's version, where you're a survivor who escaped a toxic family. I'm old enough now to understand that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but probably closer to the internet's version. I'm not asking for money or favors. I just wanted you to know that someone in that family understands what happened to you wasn't right. And I'm sorry you went through it. You didn't deserve it. I sat with that message for a week. Then I responded, Marcus, thank you for reaching out. You seem like a thoughtful young man, which speaks well of you. I'm glad you're asking questions and drawing your own conclusions. I wish you all the best in your life. If you ever want to talk, not about the past, but about your future, my door is open. He wrote back immediately. I'd like that. We've been corresponding for 3 months now, carefully, slowly, building something new that has nothing to do with the past. He wants to work in biotech. I'm helping him find internships, not because we're blood, but because he reminds me of myself. Smart, struggling, trying to build something from difficult circumstances. Maybe this is what closure looks like. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just the careful construction of something new from the rubble of what was destroyed. I've been asked in interviews if I regret the choices I made, if I regret cutting off my family, refusing to attend funerals, turning away from my dying mother. The answer is always no. I regret that I had to make those choices. I regret that my family forced me into a position where survival meant separation. I regret the years I wasted hoping they would love me. But the choices themselves? No. Those choices saved my life. In my first life, trying to maintain the connection killed me. In my second life, severing it let me thrive. I am 43 years old. I have been cancer-free for 19 years. I have built a fortune, a family, and a legacy. I have saved thousands of lives through my foundation. I have daughters who will never doubt their worth, and sometimes, late at night, I think about my parents in their tiny apartment, struggling to make ends meet, watching their golden child Melissa stock shelves at a department store, living with the knowledge that their other daughter built an empire they'll never touch. I think about them finally understanding, too late, always too late, that they chose wrong, that they could have had both daughters, that love wasn't a zero-sum game, that Melissa's success didn't require my sacrifice. I think about them dying with my name on their lips, begging for forgiveness I never gave, and I sleep peacefully, because this is what victory looks like. Not revenge. Revenge is loud and dramatic and temporary. This is something better. This is justice. This is consequence. This is living well as the ultimate evidence of their failure. They chose Melissa's college fund over my hospital bills, and they never recovered, but I did. I survived. I thrived. And I owe them nothing. Not my time, not my fortune, not my forgiveness, and certainly not my daughters. I am Emily Chen. I am my grandmother's heir. I am a survivor. I am free, and that is the end of their story in my life and the beginning of everything else.